Welcome to the hottest grappling show in Arizona. The Valley is home to an amazing grappling community. Join us as we roll through the top jiu-jitsu schools in the state. Our goal? To highlight incredible instructors, their academies, and their amazing journeys through life and jiu-jitsu. It's not the destination, it's the journey that counts. Welcome to Rollin Through the Valley. Sills here, rolling through the valley. Here we are at Jay Page's, and with me is Jay Page's himself. Jay,
how's it going?
How's it going with you?
It's going. It's going.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
No, thanks for coming. You know, I've been looking forward, to meeting you and doing one of these. I've seen some of the other schools on there, and look like fun. So
awesome. Now, all of Arizona wants to know a little bit about Jay Page's.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, gosh, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, I'm horrible at ball sports, so that's kind of what got me into jiu-jitsu. You know, I
love it.
I was too short for basketball, too small for football. I had like really no hand-eye coordination for baseball. So,
right.
But I could kick and punch pretty well. So I was like very into martial arts. Nice. Growing up as a kid, and just was spawned off from there, and then the UFC came out, and it's kind of what got me into jiu-jitsu. You know, it's just kind of like what happened with a lot of people, like way back then in the 90s. You know, They saw UFC and like, oh, that's cool, I want to start doing that kind of.
At what age did you start?
I was 16, so 1994. Was my first introduction to jiu-jitsu. Like I said, I've always been into martial arts, and I actually saw, I had a subscription to a magazine, and they featured one of the Gracies, and I have always seen like their VHS tapes. Right. You know, for those too young to know what a VHS tape is. You know, but and I just always saw it all the time, and I didn't think too much about it until I watched the UFC, and then. That's just kind of what got me into it.
Any particular fight that you saw that you're like, man, I got to do this, or what sparked it?
Honestly, it was just the very first match that Royce had in that first event. That's kind of this guy's pretty small, and everyone else is significantly bigger than him. So I was like, guys, if it's got to work for this guy, it's got to work for me, kind of thing. So. But funny story is I actually in my black belt, in that black belt magazine, there was an ad in the back, and granted I was a kid. I was I think I was 16 years old or something at the time, or earlier than that. I'm like, all right, I'll sign. I saw they're looking for people in karate, boxing, kick. I'm like, I could do that. So I went and signed up. I requested an application, and I'm like reading through. I'm like, God, they want a lot of information here. Yeah. But then I was like, hell, I'll do it. I'm like, sent it in, and I think I was probably just too young for it. Right. So I was like, not a problem. And I looked, I finally saw, I'm like, crap, it was for the UFC. Right. Like the original UFC. I'm like, I am so glad I didn't do it. I was like, I couldn't even imagine what it would have been like, cause just doing karate and kung fu, and growing up, and seeing Royce just mess everyone up on the ground. I'm like, I could only imagine how much, I would have felt like a fish out of water. Right. And I could imagine all those guys that had to fight him were feeling the same way. So. Right. So are you an Arizona native? Where did you kind of start jiu-jitsu? Tell us about that. I was actually originally from Brooklyn.
I'm from Jersey.
Oh yeah, nice. Hey, East Coaster. Yeah. What part of Jersey?
Elmwood Park.
Okay, where's that at?
North Jersey.
Okay, so
like 20 minutes
25 minutes from the city.
So not too far from like Jersey City, Bayonne.
Yeah,
right
there.
So I have family over there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, so I like in the 80s, you know, Brooklyn wasn't the greatest place to grow up.
Right.
And my parents didn't want us growing up there, so
yeah.
we moved out to California, had some family in California, and kind of grew up my younger years there. And then I did all my like martial arts training out there in California, most of it in California.
Nice.
And then I got into jiu-jitsu with this guy I did Jeet Kune Do with.
Okay.
He would go to the Torrance Academy every like few weeks, you know, do a private, and then come back and just show us what he'd learned, you know. And then I actually came out to Arizona when I was 17 to get residency for ASU. So, and then that when I moved out here, saw a couple jiu-jitsu schools here, and I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go there and signed up, and it's kind of like that's been, you know, been at like my whole journey into jiu-jitsu. So like I didn't really put a gi on until 1998 when I was out here. So
yeah.
So for about 4 years, just, you know, all no gi work. I mean,
awesome.
You know, it's gis were few and far between anyway back then. So we just did what we could, and but yeah, I'm like I've lived here in Arizona most of my life, but the majority of my jiu-jitsu roots all out here in Arizona.
Awesome. What does jiu-jitsu mean to you, and how does it relate to life?
So it is like jiu-jitsu is my life. I mean, it's like,
I know, right?
I mean, I make my living doing jiu-jitsu, but the biggest, I want to say the biggest carryover from jiu-jitsu into life is just dealing with pressure, you know, dealing with failure. And I mean, nothing brushes the ego more than jiu-jitsu, you know. And
I think, absolutely agree with that.
And I think that's why a lot of people either quit or just don't get into jiu-jitsu altogether. Right. We've had a lot of NFL players come through, and just their egos couldn't handle them getting their butts kicked.
Or bodybuilders, you know, they think you could muscle them.
Exactly, exactly. So, and I think that's the biggest carryover is learning how to deal with your ego and getting your ego in check, and humility are like the biggest carryovers I think in jiu-jitsu, and carries into life as far as like dealing with pressure and failure, because like, I don't think anything teaches you more about failure than jiu-jitsu. Right. You know, like most other sports, even like wrestling, you don't see men and women wrestling together. You don't see men and women competing on an amateur.
That's actually so true. I haven't thought about that. Yeah.
And then when you have a woman come and just whoop up on you, I mean, it's the biggest like kick to the ego, you know, that anyone will ever have to deal with. And if people that stick with it, like over time, it kind of really puts in everything, their ego, you know, and technique and everything into perspective. That you just can't muscle everything. You know, and especially like when you get older, like I'm up there in age, and I think it's like with the older crew, the older crowds, they get to realize like they're no spring chicken, and they just can't like muscle everything or control everything like younger people can. You know, so
absolutely.
But I think like I said, like the biggest thing is just get everyone's ego in check.
Do you think competition is for everyone? What are your thoughts on competition?
So I think competition is for everyone. Just like jiu-jitsu is for everyone. No, I take it back.
Okay.
Everyone could do jiu-jitsu and everyone can compete, but it isn't for everyone.
Okay.
Okay. So I always tell people that you should always try it at least once, you know, just to test your mettle, you know, see, you know, at least compete at least once at every belt rank. You know, and because it's different, you get different tastes, different flavors of training in the academy at different speeds. You know, if you come from a school that has a competition class or that's separated from a regular class, you get different feels of everything. But competition's like the ultimate feel of, you know, a combination of adrenaline and energy dumps and fatigue, and you know, I think everyone needs to feel that, you know, at least once. And whether they're into it for, you know, to compete or not, in the jiu-jitsu to compete or not, I just think everyone should. That's like my basic philosophy on it. Now, is it for everyone? No, because again, a lot of people are just, you know, hobbyists, and a lot of people are just into learning, you know, new skill, or just a getaway, you know, for, you know, maybe just like everyone's not into golf to compete in golf. You know, they're in it because they love the game. They love playing with, you know, golf with their friends. Just like people come here to do jiu-jitsu with their friends. You know, they don't. A lot of people have no dreams or aspirations for it. But again, like I said, regardless of whether they are into it for competition or not, I think everyone should still at least do it once.
Absolutely. So you guys are pretty big on the competition scene. We see you guys all the time at AZBJJ League, killing it.
Thank you, thank you.
So that is awesome. So do you have a competition class? How do you kind of run your classes for competition?
So we do. We have our competition classes 5, sometimes 6 days a week. The way I run those classes, they're run for building strategies and A-game development for the athletes. Technical development is, you know, spent in our regular classes, but developing the speed, getting used to the speed of competition, developing everyone's A-game specific for competition, or preparation for very specific rule sets. That's how we run our comp classes. And again, depending on what we have coming up, whether it's one of Gustavo's the AZ BJJL tournaments, or if it's a submission-only tournament, or if it's an ADCC style rule set, you know, those tend to alter how the classes are run. But at the end of the day, based on the rule sets that we're preparing for, that's, you know, the strategies we're developing in those classes and the A-games we're developing in those classes are kind of moving that direction.
Even with the kids, or do you
so
run
the kids? No, so I don't run the kids classes or the kids comp classes. That's one of our head kids coaches. He does run it similarly, but a lot of it, I know they do a lot of judo and a lot of wrestling with the kids. And working on kind of like sequential flows from A to B for the kids, you know, keeping it as simple as possible so the kids know where to start and where to end. So you do work a little bit of judo and wrestling? Yes. That's awesome. I'm really big on judo and really big on wrestling here. Like I wrestled when I was in high school. It was horrible, you know, like, but I still wrestled, and I still, you know, understood the benefits of wrestling. And so a lot of our jiu-jitsu here is very wrestling like influenced. You know, and so we have a couple wrestling classes throughout the week, and we have a couple judo classes throughout the week as well. So I'm a firm believer of going for the takedown first, not pulling. You know, but I always segue that with the reason you should pull is if you know the person standing across from you is better at takedowns. You know, so again, it's just a basic strategic decision. These are the secrets you need to hear. It's just a strategic decision. You know, I'm not going to waste time trying to fight someone on their feet if I know I can't take them down, or if I have an idea that I can't take them down. So I want to get it to the ground as soon as possible. So I spend more time fighting for the submission versus sumo wrestling on our feet. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your first competition experience. So what's funny is my first competition experience wasn't in jiu-jitsu. So I grew up doing point karate tournaments and sparring. My first actual, like, anything closely related was it's called sanshao or sanda. It's basically kickboxing with takedowns. Or wrestling. Okay, that's pretty intense. That was my so those are my earlier experiences with the competition, and then like when I was getting heavily into jiu-jitsu, I actually did MMA here, and I fought in the very first MMA event ever held in Arizona.
Oh, how'd you do?
I won. Yeah.
Nice.
And that was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Because it was the first ever MMA event held in Arizona, and I was the first fight of the night.
Nice.
And the first time we tried to have the event, it got shut down by McCain, and we had to reschedule.
Yeah.
And then so we had like a few weeks until that happened. And then I see the lineup, I'm like, I don't know, I'm like, it was just so nerve-wracking because I'm setting the precedence for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And I made the decision to fight after coming back to the gym from being sick. I had the flu.
Uh-huh.
And like my coach asked me, "You want to fight?" I'm like,
why not?
Sure. I'm like, why not? So, but yeah, that was like I said, it was really nerve-wracking just because I was the first fight of the night, and I didn't know how it was gonna go. You know, like MMA events were few and far between. Even just seeing anything on TV is still few and far between. All we saw was what was on the UFC,
right.
And the rule sets were completely different than what they were doing in the UFC. So I ended up winning. Ended up coming out on top. You know,
What'd you win with?
I would knock them out with seconds in the third round.
Goosebumps.
Seconds in the third round.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like
Cool.
it would have went to decision had I not knocked them out.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay, but what about jiu-jitsu?
So
Tell us
jiu-jitsu.
about that.
Okay. So my first jiu-jitsu competition, it was actually at an in-house tournament. Because again, like jiu-jitsu was still very new back then. It was there's like one black belt, one brown belt, and maybe a handful of blue belts teaching in the whole state.
Yeah.
And I was under one of the blue belts at the time, and we did an in-house tournament with a couple of other schools. And honestly, because I felt okay. I wasn't as nervous because I was fighting.
Yeah,
because I was fighting.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking this couldn't be any worse than getting punched in the face.
See, you're just mentally strong.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I mean, So it was fun. It was a fun experience knowing that I could compete, the adrenaline of competing and not getting punched in the face.
Okay, what is one of the biggest lessons competitions has taught you?
So one of the biggest lessons it's taught me is just having fun with it. Honestly, it took me a while, and because I wasn't into competition for as a profession. There wasn't. It wasn't available back then like it is today. You know, so it was just more like competing was just a hobby back then. And I think that I just felt like I wanted it, I took it too seriously. You know, I took winning and losing way too seriously. My ego was unbelievably over the edge at the time. And it honestly kept me from competing more. But it took me a long time to just accept, yeah, and just and have fun even with losing, you know, because my ego was just so over the top that I didn't want to lose. So if I
love that you just come out and say it too. That's really.
Yeah, I mean, and again, if you can't, then
own it, right?
You're fooling yourself. You know,
Right.
it's like I don't trust someone that can't admit that, hey, their ego got the best of them.
Right.
You know, I competed a lot, but not as much as I probably should have. A lot of my competitions didn't come until much later, like brown belt. Because it took me a long time to just kind of realize that, you know, it's okay to lose. It's okay if I win or lose, you know, and how I win or how I lose, just have fun with it, you know, and once I started having fun with it and not caring about the outcome, I started doing better, a whole lot better, you know? So, and I think that's the one thing I really try to convey to my students is that you know, no one's gonna care. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that numerous times on the internet, but really, no one's really gonna care if we win or lose.
No one does.
You know, no one's gonna remember it.
Right.
You know, only thing anyone's gonna remember is the experience that you had yourself. Did you have fun doing it? You know, because if honestly, if you're not having fun competing, then what's the point? You know, that's why I don't force people to compete. I encourage it, but I don't force it, because if they're not going to have fun doing it, I don't want them doing it. You know, because again, like if they're not having fun doing jiu-jitsu, if they're not having fun competing, what's the point?
I love it. Okay, so what advice would you give your younger self when you started jiu-jitsu?
I would have told myself to try not to master everything
all at once,
and try to keep it as simple as possible. And I think I mean, here's the thing, like back then there wasn't any really rhyme or reason to structure the structures of classes or what we learned or what was taught. You know, there wasn't strategy behind or the purpose behind the whys of what we're learning. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from learning is just understanding the whys. You know, if you don't know why you're doing something, then it's like it's not going to stick.
Right.
You know, it sticks better if you know why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that's what I would have told myself too. Is just like, don't try to master everything, and just try to understand like why you're doing it. You know, and just give yourself just one game. You know, because even now, like today, like I even have like with my guys, everyone's got a different game. Yeah. Everyone's got a different style, way to do things, and you know that's why I like our competition classes are. It's not really, there's not much instruction. There's direction, but not instruction, because I want that those classes are meant to develop their individual games. So stuff like that, I wish I would have done. But again, I think everyone was in the same boat back then, you know. So I honestly think my progression would have been faster when I was younger had I understood that.
Okay, so tell us what is currently going on at J Pages. What are you excited about? What should we look forward to?
So more competitions.
Love it.
Yeah. So from the AZBJJL tournaments all the way to submission only tournaments. We have a lot of guys getting ready for the different ADCC opens that they're promoting, and a lot of traveling. You know, I was out of town a lot last year, teaching at camps and doing seminars, and with the competitions now that a lot of our guys are doing, it's going to keep me even busier. So right now, that's like pretty much what our guys are getting ready for is like the ADCC stuff and like trials. And then we have a lot of submission only super fights that our guys have. But the one thing I'm most excited about is we have a new crop of students, like I call them juniors, that are kind of not replacing, but it's the next group, the next batch of our sub-only fighters like Oscar De Los Santos and Gabriel De Los Santos. Yeah, those two Dominican brothers, man. Yeah, they're both very good. Yeah, and they're our captains of our team. Yeah, that's awesome. And they're like kind of leading the charge with our submission-only competition team and our competition teams. Yeah. So when they were coming up, we have a new generation of athletes coming up the way they did. So that's what I'm most excited about. Yeah. Start looking out for a lot of our younger belt guys. You know, we have some white belts that are hanging with like purple and brown belts. You know, a lot of our purple and our blue and purple belts are hanging in competitions with black belts. So one of our other athletes is coming up too now, Moses Salazar.
Yeah.
We call him Baby Mo.
Yeah.
He's also doing really well.
Yeah. You guys are no slacks here.
No,
you guys are all good here.
No, appreciate it. Yeah. But yeah, then just those guys. That's the biggest thing coming out, and what I'm most excited about to see. Yeah. That like the new wave of submission only athletes coming out of here.
How can we get in touch with you? Do you have social media?
Yep. So honestly, like I'm most active on Instagram, and that's JPages, JJCTA_AZ. I am active on Facebook, but mostly like you know, Instagram is probably the best and easiest way to get a hold of me. A lot of our events that we have are posted there. A lot of our seminars and whatnot. But yeah, that would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Jay.
Thank you for
awesome.
coming. I appreciate you.
All right.
Awesome.